Yes. So as we do know, 19th of November was Men's International Day. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that itself. Um, so I feel like Men's International Day is a day that not a lot of people are aware of actually. Like everyone is aware that Women's Day is a thing, but Men's International Day is not very heard of. Um, why do you think that is, and what is your opinion about it, Arjun? Okay, I think we lost him. Hi, I think I lost you for a minute there.
Yes, I think I'm back now. Am I
Yes,
audible?
you are audible, yes. Yes, so I was asking
Okay,
that
great.
Men's International Day is not very known, right? Like all of us do know that Women's Day hai. Brands are advertising about it, giving discounts for Women's Day. There's an entire campaign that goes around that. What is your opinion on it not being the same for Men's International Day?
I think there's a lot of reasons behind it. I think first of all, it's that Men's Day is relatively very recent. It didn't start a long time back. And secondly, I think we don't really think that much about men. Even we men don't think that much about men. Every Women's Day, you'd see a lot of men saying that we want a day for ourselves as well. We want to be appreciated and we want to be noticed as well. But when the day comes on 19th November, you'd just see them not doing anything at all or just not even acknowledging that the day exists. So I think there's a lot of ignorance that comes with it and a lack of initiative from anyone in trying to change something about it. Because a lot of people, a lot of campaigns believe that men don't need anything, that we don't need any particular day for ourselves. So there is that as well, which is why a lot of companies don't have any campaigns. Why focus on men? They're okay. Men are okay. So why do we need to focus on them? And on an individual level, there's again a lot of ignorance and lack of initiative from the people themselves. They won't go out and talk to the men in their lives. They won't take the men in their lives out for something. Just celebrate them. So it's just
Yes.
inertia at this point.
Yes, I totally understand. Like that makes sense. There is lack of initiative, and there is ignorance, of course. I mean, I remember wishing a friend uh, this year, and he was like, "Oh, I didn't know that existed. Not like we care, but anyway, thanks." So it's think a bit that we are appreciating you, but sort of I get it. I get where they come from. Generally, men have a lot of barriers, and there is stigma around them expressing vulnerability or any sort of, feminine emotions per se. Of frustration and pent up anger. What, in your opinion, could help break such barriers? Because we see this a lot, right? Like, this is very common.
I,
Uh, yes.
I'm losing you a bit there. I think it might be something with my network. Just let me check.
Yeah, sure.
Hi, am I? Is everything clear now?
Yes. Yes, you're audible.
Yes,
Am I audible?
you were talking about barriers or vulnerability. Yeah.
Yes. So, there is stigma around them expressing vulnerability or any sort of feminine emotions per se, which includes sadness, grief, um, all of those things, which leads to a lot of pent up emotions, pent up anger, and frustration. What, in your opinion, as a psychologist, as a man who probably might have faced the same thing, could help, break down these barriers and sort of actually be okay with being vulnerable? Because we hear people say that it's okay to be vulnerable, but we're never taught how to be so. Um,
Mm.
and actually come out of the barriers and be like, okay, like, this is me.
I think it. it has to be something that people do together. It's not something that an individual can do by themselves because even if you try to be vulnerable in a society which does not accept you or your vulnerability, they will uh, you will regret it. If the people around you aren't ready for you to be vulnerable, if they're not accepting of you and your human self, you will regret opening up to them, and that might end up making you think that it was a bad idea to open up in the first place. I think the way we raise our boys, the way we raise our men, there is this expectation that they're not expected to show their emotions after a certain age, because again, you don't want to be girly, you don't want to be feminine, and that is something that attacks the masculinity of the guys, right? It strips them of something
Right.
that makes them what they are. So I think it will take a huge change on part of everyone, on part of the people around us, and on part of the listeners to make men vulnerable, because it's not always that the person themselves can change everything. Uh, the people around them need to be ready to receive them as well.
That's true. That's true. So while I agree with almost everything that you said, you did mention that after a certain age, men are supposed to, show only a sort of particular emotion or act masculine. But somewhere I feel like it starts way before that. Like as a child, you are said that okay, like why you crying like a girl. So, how much influence do you think all these comments in the childhood or you growing up in a particular fashion has an effect on how you manage it as an adult, right? Because as an adult, I might ask you to not express, but maybe you were allowed to do so as a child, so you might be a little more open, a little more smart, and knowing what kind of people to choose to surround yourself with, right? So, how much influence do you think all of this has in your childhood and that growing up as an adult changes?
When I was talking about the age thing, I think I what I had in mind was the age of 4 to 5 years old, not teenage years or not adulthood. That's basically where it
Yes,
starts. Even before that,
right.
um, even as children, even as toddlers, boys are usually given toys such as cars or building machines,
That's true.
bulldozers, whereas women are given different set of toys. So it starts happening right in the childhood. So, and that obviously plays out in how we live our adult lives. If a child has been trained for 10, 15 years of their lives that they are not supposed to express their emotions, they're not supposed to be girly, they're not supposed to like feminine things, it's going to be nearly impossible for them to completely change their identity, their way of being, because we demand them to do so. So, the child is the father of the man. How we raise our children is how they are going to be in the future. And the way we're raising our children, even if it's unconscious, even if it's something that's not done deliberately, especially for the boys, it can be a very, very rough world, a very, very lonely world, and one that is um, always just cold to your emotions.
So, while there are a lot of societal factors that do affect the differences in, a boy growing up and a girl growing up, do you think there are cultural influences? And I ask you this because um, I have seen you work a lot and read up a lot of researches, right? So culture is one thing that we always look for in theories or even research papers, right? Even if say suppose we want to replicate a study, culture is the first thing that comes to mind. That there will be differences in culture, which is why our results might turn out different. So what influence do you think culture has? Even if we compare, say, suppose Indian culture to a Western culture or a collectivist culture to an individualistic culture, do you think there's a stark difference there?
Surprisingly, when it comes to gender differences, when it comes to how we raise children of different genders, there's not a lot of difference when it comes to that. A parent in the USA will raise their child almost the same way as a parent in some village of India would. There are surprisingly similar cultural practices along across the world. You'd think about In the US, there was this study wherein the children were offered a finger by a caregiver, and children have a reflex, right? They grasp at it. So when they
Mm.
do that, if it was a girl child, the person who had the finger, they'd give it to them just to make them feel like you are there for them, that you're there to reassure them that they are strong as well. Whereas with boys, the person would unconsciously sometimes pull the finger away to test their strength, to see if they can, how strong they are, or how much pressure they can take up, how strong their muscles are. So we it would seem like the Western world is better than us, or the individualistic culture is different from us. But when it comes to the sensitization of boys and girls, it's surprisingly similar. And I think that's also why the suicide rates are similar as well when it comes to men and women across the world. 70 to 80% in almost all countries across the world, it's always men. And that has to have some sort of problems in how we're raising our boys.
Yes, absolutely. Very interesting study. Thank you for sharing that actually. Um, Another question I actually had was, what do you think is the relationship between emotional intelligence and the resilience when it comes to, um, again, when it comes to men in general? Because emotional intelligence is a lot vast, is more vast than just expression of emotions, right? It includes a lot about understanding your emotions, understanding someone else's emotions,
Mhm.
reciprocation, all of that, right? So, what do you think about that? Emotional intelligence and resilience in men.
I think the way we're raised, the values that we grow up with, resilience is considered a lot more important than emotional intelligence. Wherein, as we have been talking, if you are told that you have to deal with these problems yourself, if you told that you have to solve these problems yourself, it gives in this value, it imbibes this value of self-reliance in people. And self-reliance requires people to be resilient to all kinds of things. Even if they're completely breaking down, they have to appear resilient at least, that they don't have to show any emotions, they don't have to show any vulnerability. And I think
Yeah.
that's what a lot of men focus on as well, that we want to build our resilience. We don't want to be emotionally expressive. We want to be as independent, as self-reliant as possible without having to depend on other people. Emotional intelligence, as you said, requires the presence of other people around you, and that is not
Yes.
considered a major value for men to have, or a major skill for men to have, because it's all about being strong, being independent, being rich, being a top achiever, and that those are all the expectations we have from men, isn't it? So
Right.
if those are the expectations we have, those are the parameters we have of a man's success, we shouldn't be surprised that that is all they want in life. They don't want emotionally intelligent. They don't want to be emotionally intelligent because it's not really valued by the people around us.
That's true. That's true. Fair point. Um, as soon as I understand you hold support groups for men, right? To share things, to talk about things. What are the most common problems that you have observed, or main pain points for men that they're okay to talk about in the support group, maybe a little hesitant even there, but we never hear about them when it comes to in society or in public or just sharing between friends or family. What are the what are the most crucial pain points that we don't hear about often and you have observed in your support groups?
I think a very common theme that comes up very often is the fear of not being good enough, the fear of failing, and
Okay.
the fear of letting other people down. That can be in terms of relationships, that can be in terms of career, that can be in terms of employment, that can be in terms of being a boyfriend, being a friend, being a son. There's always this anxiety that we will not be good enough, or that we will not be enough for the people around us. That what they expect from us is not something we can give them. They expect these boys, they're usually 18 to 22 years old. They're in their college. They're very lonely. They don't have a lot of friends, and they want people to talk to, which is why they join these support groups. And the common theme in all of them, within all of them, the things they share is uh, this fear that we'll let other people down, that we'll disappoint them, that we will not be able to meet their expectations. And that can be a very jarring thing for you when all your identity, or when uh, boys are very openly told that the only reason they were given birth to was so that they could fulfill the expectations that the parents had. मतलब उनको बचपन से ही ये बता दिया जाता है, मे बी एट लाइक 10, 11, 12 years old, कि हमने तो तुम्हें पैदा ही इसलिए किया था ताकि तुम हम हमारी उम्मीदों पे खड़ा उतर सको, हमारे सपने पूरे कर सको, हमको आप हमारी फैमिली का ख्याल रख सको जब तुम बड़े हो जाओ. एंड दैट इज लाइक दैट कैन बी ह्यूज फॉर somebody, isn't it? If that is the whole purpose that
Yes.
you have been given by the people around you, and you feel like you're not being able to meet that purpose, that can be quite disturbing. That can be quite disturbing.
That is very true. And especially as a child, hearing that, it sort of settles in your brain that, okay, this is my purpose of life. If I'm not doing this, then what am I? What is your approach when it comes to, just managing this? Because I am a little held back because I wouldn't know how to react or what to say um, if I were moderating such a support group. What is your approach? How do you bring them to a little bit of ease when they talk about such things?
Uh, my goal is not to give them some ease, not to make things better for them. The purpose of the support groups is to make them believe that they're not alone in feeling this way, and that
Yeah.
uh, the suffering that they're going through right now is not something that they have to go through alone. There's a lot of strength in going through something similar in numbers. And if you have that community who is going through the same thing, that is experiencing the same things you are, has the same fears that you have, that can be a very powerful experience to hear the other person say the same things that are going on in your head. It doesn't need to have a solution. It does not need to feel better. You just need to know that you're not alone in this. Suffering will happen. It is a part of life, and having company through that suffering is the best that we can go for.
That, that is very powerful, actually. Power of community. Yes. Um, Arjun, you being in psychology as a profession, which is mostly seen, which is mostly led by females, right? Like you see a huge number of females in the profession, whereas we see very little men, which is unfortunate also. And it's a very stark difference. It's very evident that it's a female-driven field. What is your experience as a male professional being in the field, as a researcher, as a psychologist?
I think I completely understand in the first place why men don't usually opt for this field, because as we have been talking about, they're expected to be the providers, the primary providers of their family. So how much money they make, how much their package is in their careers is a huge determinant of how respected they will be. And
Yes.
very honestly, psychology just does not have that kind of money. When you compare it with engineers, people who have done their MBAs, who are earning what 35, 40 lakhs per annum, a psychologist can't do that. And um, if you have been trained your whole life to make as much money as possible, you have been told that the only value you will have is how much money you will make. Psychology does not seem like a very lucrative career option, right? Even for me, it's not easy. I have every 6 or 8 months, I'm thinking about leaving this and just doing an MBA and getting a regular job. Um, because again, the pressure is quite huge, even on me. So I completely understand why we don't have a lot of men. It's again a result of the expectations that we have. Um, I I had this family friend who was looking for a suitable match for marriage, and he's around 35, 36. Um, he's earning 30 LPA right now, something around that, right? And he can't find proper matches because almost all other women who are in the professional field, who are in the corporate world, they're earning more than him. And they're telling him, we won't marry somebody who earns less than us. So there is this pressure that you have to make as much money as possible, and you have to make it as quickly as
Yes,
possible. Otherwise, nobody will like you, nobody will respect you, and you'll be left alone.
that makes sense. As you just shared, it is difficult for you as well. I just want to understand what made you choose this field. Like, why against so many odds, you entered psychology as a field and you're doing the amazing work that you are doing right now. What drove you to this field?
My original plan was to just do a bachelor's in it. I didn't plan on becoming a psychologist in the first place. So I
Okay.
wanted to study psychology because I wanted some answers to the questions I had about my own illness, my own mental illness. Why did it happen the way it happened? My symptoms so different. I had a lot of curiosities. I entered the field with a lot of questions, and I found some answers. And as things went by, the next thing I knew, after my bachelor's, I was in my master's. After my master's, I was thinking about going for an MBA. I had my admission done, everything was finalized. But I don't know, something just kept me here. And yeah, it's there's no real meaningful answer that I can give you. This is my passion, or this is something that I find fulfilling, or something that I find meaningful. It's just somewhere I am right now. I enjoy the work that I do. I really, for now. But if that changes someday, I'm out.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Um, Those are all the questions I had, Arjun. I would love for you to share any more insights or, just suggestions. Like you said, that it's not an individual's job uh, to make things better for himself, right? Any sort of suggestions, um, anything that we can do at an individual level around us, uh, because change will start small, right? If maybe I can do something in my circle, maybe that'll ripple out and make a bigger impact. So, what is something that you would suggest to me, to everyone who is watching?
I think, first of all, to the guys who are watching this, I'd suggest using the emotion wheel. It's something that I absolutely love. It has genuinely increased my emotional awareness a lot more because you can only communicate something when you understand it yourself. And to understand it yourself, you need the right words. It depends on your language, right? So the emotion wheel, you can Google it. It's like a whole circle of a lot of words, and that really helps me understand what I'm feeling at a given moment, and helps me let other people know as well about what I'm going through. To the people who have men in their lives, they care about, they worry about, I think the most important thing would be to let them be when they want to be, and watch out for behavioral expressions, because it's very difficult for us to express our emotions through our words. But there are some very simple behaviors that we might sometimes do that could have a lot of meaning behind them. I give this example very often, that when my dad is missing me when I'm in Gurgaon or working, he wouldn't dare to tell me that he misses me. He just gives me a call out of nowhere, and just asks me how am I, how's work going, and when I will be back. It's barely a 30-second call, but I understand, and he understands. And this is a case where neither of us says anything, but we understand what the other person is trying to say. So, being mindful of those kind of behaviors, which could have a lot of meaning, which could have a lot of significance for the other person, that usually helps the other person as well. And if you acknowledge this, it makes the other person feel heard and understood as well, which can be something very beautiful to experience.
That is very true. This conversation was not just very. Hello. Yes.
Hello.
I was saying this conversation was not just very interesting, but also very insightful. The researches that you shared and everything that actually causes. Hearing it from a male point of view, especially the one who understands human behavior and human mind, it gives a very different perspective, right? So I really, really appreciate everything that you shared today. Um, Thank you so much for joining in. That was it from my end. Is there anything else that you want to share? Anything else that you want to ask? Say.
No, just thank you so much for having this conversation. I think
Of
you
course, of course.
started this conversation with why we don't celebrate Men's Day, and I think this is just a small start, which gets the ball rolling usually, isn't it? This year, I
Absolutely.
feel like there was more acknowledgement for Men's Day than it was last year, and there were more
Yeah,
events that were had, there were more conversations that were had. Even we even had a banner somewhere. So
yeah,
these things, they genuinely help a lot. They get the ball rolling, and we all have a part to play in this conversation. So thank you to you for starting this off.
absolutely. Thank you so much for joining in, Arjun. It was wonderful having you. I hope you have a great
Thank
week
you.
ahead. And hopefully we'll have more collaborations in the future. Thank you so much for
Sure.
everyone who joined in. Um, and yes, thank you so much. Bye. Good
Thank
evening.
you. Bye. Bye.